Another big trend, forking. Explain what forking is and why there's so much of it right now.
A fork is where a blockchain is adding blocks every 10 minutes, say, in Bitcoin, and then basically it diverges. And this can happen sometimes spontaneously because two miners win at the same time and they both continue to mine in their own direction. Those are resolved basically by a process of consensus, usually in a few minutes. But some forks are deliberate, where people will upload an alternative version of the software and invite people to opt out of the old code and to adopt theirs. So this is sort of like a group of the shareholders of a company saying, we don't agree with management, we have a different strategy, and as many people who want follow us in this direction, and then they're able to maybe divide the stock and take some of the assets with them. So this has happened now once with Ethereum and twice with Bitcoin. And what it's led to is competing versions where they have a common history up to the point of the fork. In the case of Ethereum, you have still something called Ethereum, but the original one called Ethereum Classic. It's like a schism where they both claim to be the Pope. And you have, in the case of Bitcoin, there was a fork called Bitcoin Cash that occurred last August. Bitcoin Cash was meant to increase the block size, multiplied it by a factor of 8 so that Bitcoin could accommodate the growing number of users who wanted to use it. And not long afterwards, in October, something called Bitcoin Gold was a second fork that went in the other direction. It made it, essentially reinforce some of the orthodoxy of the original Bitcoin. And these are all catering to user communities who fundamentally have different visions of the future of the coin. So it's interesting because forks are about governance and discipline of the people in charge.
What is the governance? Who gets to make these decisions?
Yeah, there is nobody in charge, which is why it's interesting. And when Bitcoin was launched, there was a folklore that when you had disagreements, anyone could put out a new version of the software. And if they got 51% to run that software, that would become the new code.
So could we do Bitcoin Stern and eventually try and come up? So we'd have to come up with some sort of code that said this is an enhancement, and then we go out and lobby Bitcoin owners to try and...
Yeah, and it turns out you don't need 51%. You just need enough to sustain a blockchain, to mine it regularly and so forth. So it looks like rather than two versions, you might have many versions of Bitcoin if it keeps growing. And whether this is a good or a bad thing remains to be seen. It's certainly something very new in finance, and it's a very organic bottom-up form of governance where people who disagree, if you can get enough of them together, they go off on their own fork with their own version of the software. Ultimately, they have to convince other people that this is the best way, people who might accept the token and so forth. The Bitcoin Cash was thought to be almost a joke that wouldn't have any value, but it's trading right now for about $1,500. And the people who got it, if you owned Bitcoin before August 1st, which was the date of the fork, you now own both. You still have your original Bitcoin, but you have the fork. And today, you have a choice. If you want to buy into it, you could buy either, you could buy both. But if you happen to have owned it before the fork occurred, you get both versions.
So,
Forking is very confusing, so I can understand that people out there get very confused. And it's very important to understand this, so I'm really glad I'm sharing this with my audience. I think it's very important. And one of the biggest issues that we do have with forking, it's an easy way to devalue the currency because we do have a fixed amount of Bitcoin that's going to be released, but you can fork it an infinite amount of times. And in that way, you can theoretically create some sort of cryptocurrency inflation. But like I said, it would have to involve the adoption of the new forks and thus taking away some of the value of the old currency. But when it comes to our current monetary policy where we have no control, I mean, it's not like 51% of the dollar holders can go and overthrow the Fed or the government or make any kind of decision on monetary policy. This could, in the future, be a better solution, definitely more democratic. And if you don't believe in the currency or the system or whatever, you do have a way to kind of revolt or, branch off and create your own. And I thought it was really funny how they use Catholicism with the multiple popes. But this is a really interesting very interesting idea and concept that you have to definitely learn about. If you're going to invest in cryptocurrencies, understand how forking works. And I don't expect anyone to kind of learn it overnight. It is a little confusing, but the more you follow the market, the more you watch some of these forks and see the results and the history, it makes it a lot easier to understand. So if you don't get this interview or you don't understand some of the content I'm sharing, don't worry about it, because if you continue to follow this channel and you follow cryptocurrencies in the news, there'll be more and more examples for you to kind of learn, and then it makes it easier for you to embrace it. I myself am still learning. I am constantly evolving, and like I said, the best thing I've done is since July been pretty active with following the market, and especially since I've created this channel, it's forced me to pretty much follow the market every day, and it really does help with learning and understanding some of these concepts. So let me know what you guys think. Thank you very much for watching. Please leave some comments. Let me know if you like these interviews, and hopefully I can find more content like this. Or if you don't like the content, maybe I can find better content you like in some of my other videos. Please let me know. I really do appreciate it, and I will talk to you guys soon.